All praises to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Rakak Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and Shalom to the nation of Israel. This is going to be a lesson talking about how we shouldn't be distracted, or don't let all of these distractions in the world stop us from understanding the end of all of these things, man. And what are some of the I'll talk about what some of the distractions are in a minute after I read this scripture. This is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 2. For ye yourselves know that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. So there's the day of the Lord is going to come at a point where people don't expect it. If you're not looking, all right? If you're not looking and paying attention, the day of the Lord is going to come as a thief in the night. But if you're looking, you're not going to be distracted by these things that are in the world to keep us away from waiting patiently for the change, where we become something greater than what we are now. This is 1 John chapter 2, Salakia, and verse 15. Love not the world. Salakia, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. So all of the things that distract you in this world are things like your job, all right, having a good job, or bills. That's a thing that can distract you from focusing on the heavenly things. And there's a scripture in, I believe it's Wisdom of Solomon, where it talks about how you need certain types of people to build a society, like those construction type of guys, right? But it also goes into how wisdom comes through time of leisure, right? It says wisdom comes through time of leisure. How can a man focus on wisdom? This is me paraphrasing it. How can a man focus on wisdom if he's worried about iron? How can a man focus on wisdom if he's worried about like the things of this world? It goes into that. And you won't be able to focus on the heavenly things if you're distracted by all the things that's going on in this world. Like, there's certain things that we pay attention to in this world. Let me just read this verse 16. For all that is of the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. And there's many things that we get distracted by in this world, like sports and stuff like that, right? You just recently had the Tyson Fury versus Wilder fight, and that can be a distraction for people. The way it takes up your time leading up to the fight, distracting your attention away from other things that are going on in the world, right? And then after that fight, there'll be another fight that comes along, there'll be another sport event that comes along, and these things just continually keep people in a cycle of being distracted, to where when the day of the Lord comes, they're not going to understand why it's here, and to them it's going to seem as though it was a random occurrence, whereas it's been gradually building up to this point for a long time. Verse 17, and the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. And I'm going to get another scripture as well. Salakia. This is Mark chapter 8 and verse 36. For what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? So what does it profit if you've been living your life and you've got all of these different things that you've gained, but when it comes down to what the whole point of life is, you didn't have 1% gained of that. So you had 99, you might have been 50% gained, 50% of all the skills that you need to sustain yourself in this world. But when it came to what life's actually really about, you had 0% of it. Or you might be a person that seems lucky now in this world, that's got 100% of the things that make you a high status in this world. You might have the look, you might have the finances, you might have the power, you might have the success, you might have the respect, right? You might have the health that this world admires. But when it comes to the heavenly things, you've got none of it, because you were distracted and zoned in and trapped in things in the cares of this world, things that didn't really matter. Because despite what everyone wants to say, everyone is going to have to face this scripture right here, what I'm about to read. Everyone's going to be faced with this particular event that's coming. This is Revelation chapter 13 and verse 16. And he calleth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So it's not going to matter whether you was rich in this time. It's not going to matter whether you was poor in this time. It's not going to matter whether you was great. It's not going to matter whether you was small. It's not going to matter whether you were free. It's not going to matter whether you was bond, because everyone's going to be faced with this. But some people that are of these categories was paying attention and are going to have what it takes spiritually to fight against these things, because that's where it's going to matter. What you have spiritually, what you have in your spirit to fight off loving this world and wanting to be in it more. Because it's going to get to the point where you're not going to be able to be a part of this world unless you're prepared to do certain things. And we're already seeing that, where certain people are refusing liquid injectables, right? And therefore, because they refuse liquid injectables, they're not allowed to go to restaurants. They might not be allowed to go into I don't know. I'm trying to think of. They might not be allowed to go into a nightclub. They might not be allowed to go into a cinema because they refuse liquid injectables. But there's going to be people that are not going to take none of these things, and they're not going to care about wanting to join into these things, because they understand that there's something greater than all of these things coming. And I'm going to go back to that scripture again in Mark, the 8th chapter. This is Mark chapter 8 and verse 36. For what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? What can you give in exchange for the gift of everlasting life? And that's something that these Edomites did. These Edomites gained the whole world, right? But they gave up their home. You know what? Let me go to that, man. Because that's an Edomite thing to do. To give up the whole world, but lose your own soul. That's an Edomite thing to do. Let me find that. We ain't no Edomites around here. Man, it's been a long time since I read this. Maybe it's 27. This is Genesis chapter 27 and verse 36. And he said, is he not rightly... In fact, let me jump up a bit sooner than that. I want to find the part where Esau said, what shall the blessing be unto me? Still lock here. This is Genesis chapter 25 and verse 29. And Jacob sowed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, behold, I am at the point to die. What profit shall this birthright do to me? So that's Esau. Esau tried to gain the whole world, but lost his own soul, man. He didn't even care about his birthright because he wanted a meal. You see what I mean? And the world was way more abundant back then than it is now. So I'm pretty sure there would have been something that he could have ate other than Jacob's food, man. Let me read it again. Genesis chapter 25 and verse 32. And Esau said, behold, I am at the point to die. What profit shall this birthright do unto me? And I'm pretty sure that there would have been other things that he could have ate, man. But because he's an Edomite with a weak spirit, a weak person, he decided to just be like, you know what, forget the birthright. What's it worth to me? Instead of being like, you know what, the birthright means a lot. Verse 33, and Jacob said, swear to me this day. And he sware to him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So Esau didn't care about the birthright, right? He didn't care about it, man. He didn't care. And he didn't care about the blessing neither. He didn't really care about the blessing that he had either, to be honest with you. And this was ultimately the Yahweh's way of taking these things away from him. Because he's happy to have the sword as a blessing. It's not like he's tried to change up since he's realised what Jacob's blessing was that got taken away from him. He ain't been like, you know what, let me try and live that way instead. Because that's obviously the way that I was supposed to live. He ain't said, you know what, let me start following God's laws. He's just lived by the sword. So he didn't really care about the blessing that he lost anyway. He was happier to receive the blessing of the sword, man. These Edomites love the sword. They love it. Yeah, that's gonna be that's gonna be the lesson. I don't think there's any need for me to bring out any more scriptures on this point. Apart, like, the point of the lesson was just to say, don't be distracted by we can't be distracted by too many things in this world, man, because there's many more heavenly things that we're waiting for outside of the things that we've got in this world right now. All praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakak Radash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and Shalom to the nation of Israel. Shalom.